Right, hello, good evening everybody and welcome to our latest Facebook Live session here at Wolverhampton Homes. I'm Bex Clark, I'm the Head of Customer Experience here and we're delighted that you've been able to join us this evening. We're here tonight to talk to you about our new and exciting plans that we've got to have customers more involved in how we operate here, the services that we run, and most importantly, the decisions that we take that impact the services that customers receive. We really want to have your say and your input into how that all works. There have been lots of changes over the last couple of years that some of you may have seen on the news and in the media, but that goes right across the social housing sector. And all of that is the aim of government really, to put customers and social housing tenants at the heart of what their landlord and their providers do. And we're being asked to demonstrate that back to regulators and to government to prove that we are actually involving customers in a positive way. I'm delighted to say as well that we're joined tonight by industry expert Kevin, who specialises in tenant involvement, working for an organisation called the Tenant Participatory Advisory Service, or better known as TPAS. So without further ado, Kevin, can you tell everybody a little bit more about TPAS and your role?
Yeah, sure. So TPAS is a national not-for-profit organisation, works along roughly the same lines as a charity. So all the work we do and the money we make from what we do, we plough back into our business. We were set up over 30 years ago by a commission that was actually led by Prince Philip, of all people, and I only found that out recently. They looked at the social housing. They said, really, we need an organisation that's expert in tenant engagement and specialises in that and supports tenants and landlords to do tenant engagement better. So that's where we came in, and for the last 30 years we've been developing our services to do all sorts of different things. So we do policy work, we speak to government, we try and influence ministers, we do a lot of training, we do consultancy work working with communities and community groups around the country. Online training, all sorts of things, and also we have a bank of documents and a bank of sort of excellence, really, so people can look and read and discover more about tenant engagement, and that's all online. If people want to visit us, we're at tpas.org.uk. So over time, we've built up this expertise, and we try and make that available to people online and in person. I myself do lots of work around the country. We're a national organisation as well. I think it's worth mentioning that. We work all over England. And yeah, we do all sorts of work around training and developing. But sometimes people ask me, what's that definition of tenant engagement? What does it actually mean? So I kind of looked it up and said, what do we say on our webpage when we talk about it? So really, because it's a bit of jargon really in the industry that people talk about tenant engagement. What does it mean? Well, our definition is working with tenants to co-produce effective services that meet a variety of needs. And that's about making the landlord accountable. And it's about trying to improve communications, which is often an issue for tenants. They say communications with my landlord aren't that great and they need to get better. And also, I think, a bit about trying to help tenants and residents to scrutinise their landlord as well. And we'll talk, I think, a little bit about what scrutiny is a bit further down the line. So that's TPAS, that's what we do. And we also hold a national conference every year. We just had it. We hold it in the Midlands as well, and that's a chance for everybody to come together and share knowledge and experience. So we're very much about trying to open up conversations to get people to share knowledge and experience amongst themselves and learn from each other, and we kind of host and facilitate that.
Okay, brilliant. Good introduction there.
Thank you.
So it segues nicely, Kevin, but I'm sure people live with us tonight will be wondering what you're doing here with us tonight. Sure. So can you tell everybody a little bit about why you're here and the work that you're doing alongside ourselves and the City Council? Yeah,
sure. So kind of in terms of the aim of our involvement, really, the City Council invited us in. We're going to work with the Council and with the managing agents, all four of the managing agents in the area. And we're trying to deliver a tenant-led scrutiny and engagement service. So we're going to look at how the Council delivers tenant engagement in Wolverhampton. They've invited us in and said, have a look at this for us, help us to get ready for the really big changes in regulation that are coming our way. So we've been here for a while now, just looking at all the different ways that yourselves as Wolverhampton Homes, the other managing agents and the council are preparing for those big changes. So some of the things we've been doing just to help viewers understand. We've been looking and helping prepare for the regulations. So there have been a lot of regulations coming out from the regulator and making sure that you're fit for purpose, ready to go, you're addressing what the regulator is now expecting from you. We're helping to develop a strategy. Strategy is always a very fancy term, isn't it, really? But really what that means is we're looking at how residents can influence decision making, making sure residents' voices are heard in Wolverhampton and at Wolverhampton Homes, and making sure that tenants' views are being listened to and acknowledged. So it's that thing about influence. We're really trying to help the council and its managing agents to make sure that your tenants and residents are influencing your services and the way you do things. We've also supported some consultation events as well. The council's been listening, quite rightly so. It needs to get out and listen to tenants and residents, hear their views and these things. So we've attended some consultation events. We've got involved in co-design sessions. So again, and some of the survey work as well. So the council's going to try and pull in as much information and as many views as possible from residents as part of this project. A couple of other things as well. Developing a new scrutiny, resident-led scrutiny process across the city. We're going to talk about scrutiny, I think, a little bit further down the line. But we're making sure that tenants and residents of all parts of the city, and even if you're a tenant in a tenant management organisation, that you've got a way of scrutinising your landlord. We'll talk about that, I know, in a little while. And my colleague Mark is here to sort of coach and mentor people who want to get involved. And there's lots of opportunities and new opportunities to join panels and groups. And Mark's expertise is around coaching and mentoring people that maybe have never done it before, don't know quite what it involves. And he's got a set of skills around sort of helping people to prepare to go to meetings, what to read, the kind of questions you need to ask and such like. So there's some of the things that we've been doing in the city. And I think it's just worth mentioning that out of that, a strategy has been developed. I believe it's going to Cabinet in September. And there are 6 commitments that the council have now made to tenants and residents in the city about what they're going to do to improve tenant and resident engagement. And they're available. I think the documents are out there and been published now. So if people want to have a look at those, I believe they'll probably be on the council website because they'll certainly be going to Cabinet fairly shortly. So we think those six commitments are really important, and they do address the kind of issues we're going to be talking about around the new regulations and the government's, the way the government is now approaching the issue. Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And again, leads nicely into the next question. I'm sure a lot of the viewers and listeners tonight will be thinking, from some of the stuff and what you've said, why is this piece of work important now in this moment? What's suddenly brought on the strategy and all the good work you've said's going on across the country? What is it that's changed and brought some of this stuff on?
Sure. Well, I think we're a very, very important era at the moment. Sadly brought about by the Grenfell tragedy. I think this is what started the ball rolling. And government has very clearly said, we need to address the issue of tenant engagement and empowerment, and we need to bring in some regulation and some law. So we've had a very important event last week. A new Act of Parliament was passed, a new law came into being. And a lot of tenants around the country say to me, we hear these changes, we hear that something's going to be new and something's going to be different. Would it really make any difference? Well, I think this new piece of legislation, this new act, really is driving and encouraging and forcing, in some cases, social landlords to change the way they do things. So Grenfell was really, I think, the driver for that. And the what's called the Social Housing Regulation Act is actually emphasising the importance of resident engagement, and it's really focusing on that. There's also a new regulator, or a fairly new regulator, the Regulator of Social Housing, created a few years ago. And the regulator is moving from what used to be called quite a reactive, and I'll explain what I mean by that, to a proactive way of inspecting. So generally, the approach of the regulator previously was, unless something was going really badly wrong at a social landlord, they wouldn't intervene. They would monitor, they would receive monitoring information, but really they wouldn't have a great deal to do with social landlords. They'd let them get on with it. That's changing. And now social landlords are going to be inspected. There will be an inspection regime, a little bit like Ofsted. It's referred to as an Ofsted-style inspection regime. And they'll be coming in and actually looking very closely at how social landlords are performing. And they're also gathering a lot of more information in terms of performance data, but also the views of tenants and what they think of their landlords. They're going to be looking at that very, very closely, I think. You yourselves at Wolverhampton Homes are a part of this, and you're already starting to collect feedback, aren't you, about what tenants think of your services. that will be looked at, I think, very closely by the regulator. So a regulator that's starting to get real teeth and will be asking some very difficult questions, will be very challenging, I think, and will be really wanting to ensure that tenants and residents have a voice and a say, because that was one of the great, flaws of Grenfell, wasn't it? That it was felt that tenants and residents weren't being heard, they weren't being listened to. And these changes really are designed to strengthen the regulator's powers to be able to take action if these things don't happen. I also wanted to flag up as well that the Housing Ombudsman, who is the organisation that deals with complaints from tenants, has also been strengthened under this Act as well. And those of us who work in social housing on a weekly basis now are seeing their reports being published, landlords being fined for not handling complaints properly. The Ombudsman is promoting those cases, is showing what's gone wrong and what needs to be put right. So along with the regulator, the Ombudsman is now getting a much sort of stronger voice and has a lot more power behind them. And those two organisations are working closely together. So what we're already seeing, and I think for those viewers who are aware of the damp and mould situation in the country, it was really the complaints that were coming through the Ombudsman service that they were picking up and saying, we think there's a real problem here. They talked to the regulator, and we've already seen very dramatic action by the regulator to intervene and to say, right, we really need to do something about this problem. And there was some very direct action taken about that. So again, I think we've seen that have an impact straight away. And I think some of the things that the regulator is now expecting organisations like Wolverhampton Homes to do is be transparent about decision making and performance. So you are going to need to show a lot more about how you're performing to tenants and be accountable for that. And I think that's the key thing, that the regulator is expecting you to answer questions, explain why you're doing things or not doing things, why your performance is good or bad or indifferent. And I think put things right quickly. So one of the things the Ombudsman is really driving hard on, I think, is if there's a complaint, get it right first time, handle it well. The success story is if you don't have to go to the Ombudsman, then it's been dealt with quickly and well and efficiently. So I think there's a real pressure now on social landlords to handle their complaints, not to lose them, not to forget them, not to sort of let them go missing, but really make sure they handle a complaint well and deal with it. And I know that's a real issue for many tenants around the country. They don't feel as if their landlord does deal with their complaints very well. And I think the other big theme is to listen to tenants through engagement, is actually that you should be reaching out and talking regularly to all your residents about their views on things, their opinions on things, what matters to them, and then doing something about it. So I think you're going to be under very close scrutiny from the regulator to make sure that you're listening to those voices, very importantly. There are a number of, just to go on, another sort of expectations that the regulator's putting on you, and I think it's just worth just flagging these. They're fairly short. They want people to be safe in their homes. They want to know that your landlord is performing and how you're performing, so there's an expectation on you to do that. We mentioned complaints being dealt with effectively and fairly. I think another big issue that came out of Grenfell was respect and treating people with respect, and the issue of people being stereotyped because they happen to live in social housing. And I know, again, the regulator's working hard to try and deal with that stigma. Having your voice heard by your landlord, good quality home in a neighbourhood that's good to live in as well. And I know for an organisation like Wolverhampton Homes, you are conscious that it's not just about the house, it's about the neighbourhood as well, isn't it? And for those who want to take their first step into home ownership, there is mention in the Act about you helping people to get into home ownership. And the other thing I just finally flag, which is something I flag with tenants all around the country whenever I talk to them, and I try and make them aware of, is you also have to work to a set of consumer standards as well. The regulator has set a set of standards about how you should work as a landlord. And they're a good way of just checking out, does my landlord do what they're supposed to do? And they're around things like tenancy and home and such like, and tenant engagement as well. And I would encourage viewers to have a look at those standards. They're being reviewed, they're being revised by the regulator as we speak. But it's a good way just to check whether or not your landlord's doing what they're doing. So in short, there's a new law in place. The regulator has been given real powers, and TPAS certainly believes you're going to see quite a significant change in the way the regulator regulates the sector and drives performance improvement with landlords.
Absolutely. We can see that there are some questions and comments coming in at the moment, so thank you for those, and we will make time to go through the questions at the end if people can hang on, and you will be able to re-watch this afterwards in case you do need to shoot off. Picking up on some of the things that Kevin said there, I think we have to acknowledge it at Wolverhampton Homes we are early on in the journey. Some of this regulation has been in place or building over the last couple of years, so we have tried to get on the front foot and make some positive changes and recruit new members of staff and listen to customers about what's important to them. But ultimately, for all of the things that Kevin's mentioned, we need to make sure that we've got a proper structure in place so that we can hear from customers and a diverse range of customers as well. So the next step in our journey really that we're hoping some of you will be interested in being a part of is the creation of a new customer panel. So we're really happy to announce that this evening, and the customer panel will be a group of customers that we'll recruit from across the city, from lots of different backgrounds that can come together and support us in making more customer focused decisions. So we want to hear customer voices, we want to understand that better. We're not in the same position as the people living in our homes and in our communities all of the time. So it is important that we get that feedback from customers in a meaningful way. And that will be supported by TPAS. So Kevin at the start of this session mentioned about the range of training and the mentoring and the coaching that's available through TPAS. We'll be taking full advantage of that to really help anyone that wants to get involved to come forwards and feel like they're properly supported to get their head around the role, and ultimately for it to work really, and for us to be held accountable and ensure we're meeting those new rules and standards that we've touched on throughout tonight already. There's things like tenant satisfaction measures, so we've already been collecting those over the last 12 months and we've got tons and tons of feedback from customers. We get feedback every day on Facebook from customers, and I'm sure some of you have followed our Facebook page and commented on things before. We're looking to take all of that and put that to the customer panel so that they can help us to make decisions. So what's the important thing for customers and how can we go about putting a better solution or an improved service in place? And equally, where things are good, how do we make sure that they can become even better or stay at a good standard? So that's what's important. We've worked with TPAS a lot throughout the journey so far. So the next question really was to get your take on what you've heard so far about what we're doing, Kevin, and also how it compares, I guess, to what other landlords that are maybe, a bit further along in their journey. How does it compare to what they're doing and some of the good stuff you've seen around the country?
Sure. Just before we move on to that question, just picking up on that point there, I think it's really important for tenants to understand that the regulator will be talking to them directly about what they think of their landlord. They're very, very keen to hear the tenant's voice. And I was with the regulator, one of the regulators, a few weeks ago in West Yorkshire, and they sat in the room with a group of tenants. There were no members of the organisation present, and they really wanted to know what their views were of their landlord. And I think that's just really important to acknowledge. And there is real intervention powers for the regulator now. They can intervene, they can fine, they can put in place improvement plans. So they're being given a lot of powers to drive improvement where they're not satisfied that a landlord is delivering the services in the way they should. So I just wanted to emphasise that point, that when people are thinking, what's different now? What will feel different about regulation? I think one of the main things is that the regulator will be talking to tenants directly. They have actually set up a national panel to listen to tenants already. But that's quite important. And I think when they come to visit here in Wolverhampton, they'll certainly be talking to local residents about their views of the place. But moving on to your question, I've got your model up in front of me now, and I'm just going to talk about that really, really, Bex. I think it's a really good model. And it works at a few different levels, doesn't it? You've got a decision-making level where tenants are actually involved in decision-making. You've got what you call a recommendations level, where tenants are working with you, collaborating and co-creating with you. And then you've got what you call your involvement insight and evidence sort of level, where people can just sort of chip in with comments and views and opinions. You can raise awareness. People can opt in to do different types of activities. I think one of the main things is for people to think about is the level of involvement for each of these things. And we believe that you should have a menu so that if somebody's maybe only got an hour now and then, they can get involved, and if somebody wants to give a few hours a week and come to something, they can do that as well. So I think having a menu of choices, you clearly have got a menu of choices for people. But I think the important thing here is what we've been talking to you about as we've been working with you is, where's the influence? Where where does the tenant's voice get heard in all of this? Does it speak to power? Who hears your voice? Is it the board of Wolverhampton Homes? Is it the executive team? Is it the people that make decisions and have power? And I think in your model, clearly, there are ways for tenants to speak to power, and I think that's really important. So if we look at the model, on one hand, you've got tenant board members, you've got a communities and service delivery committee, and that's a kind of a very sort of high-level decision-making role. So tenants are involved there, aren't they? But then, as you talked about, you've already advertised your customer excellence panel. We'll talk again a little bit about the scrutiny panel in a while. And tenants and residents associations, of course, are really important, and you've got a long tradition here, I know, in the city. And then just in terms of that kind of involvement, insight and evidence stuff, loads of things happening, aren't there? You're doing customer satisfaction surveys, complaints, and I know you obviously have a very big role in handling complaints, keeping customers updated, offering volunteering opportunities. There's a whole mix of activities there. So this is something we very much support. Your approach, with that menu of choice is really, really important. But always the test is, will that involvement make a difference? Will it be heard by decision makers and people in power? And will they be accountable to tenants and residents for the decisions they make? So it's very, very important, and I know you're building this into your model as you go, that you show how that tenant voice has changed and influenced things, and you advertise that and you promote that. Because we think that when tenants see that they can make a change, they're more likely to get involved and have their say. But if nothing happens, it's a turn-off, and people tend to sort of give up and become a little bit downhearted. So I think your model really does offer that wide range of opportunities, and also, addresses that issue of that. But I'll keep coming back to accountability. It's important that Wolverhampton Homes are accountable for what they do. They track things and they deliver on what they say they're going to do. And I know we were talking earlier about how you're working to make sure that wherever tenants are involved, those actions are tracked and reported back to tenants. If they raise something, people take responsibility for responding and replying and making sure it gets done.
Okay, lovely. And I can see again, there's more comments coming in. Thank you again for those, and for those of you that have just joined us. We are, talking through some of our plans to get customers more involved. Sometimes, quite a few tenants and customers have got involved off the back of perhaps when something hasn't been quite right that they've experienced, and they're passionate about making sure that that gets changed moving forward. So even some of the points that are being raised and get raised every day with us either calling in or on Facebook or emailing us, we want to make sure we're picking up on those, and that customers can be part of any solution that needs to be put forward, really, to help improve the service. Aside from the customer panel, the other thing, as part of these different ways we'd like customers to help us if we can, a little bit more informal but very, very important, we want to set up different scrutiny panels. So, for instance, where we're getting maybe some feedback from customers about, how somebody can report a repair, for instance, or the lettings process to get a new property. What's the feedback from customers? And if we are getting elements of feedback, we'd like to recruit customers so they can come in and look at that specific area for us. So if you've been through that yourself, you'd be in a perfect position to be able to come and say, well, this is what it felt like to me when I was trying to book a repair, or when I was on the housing register, for instance, to use those two examples. So that's what we're hoping to set up, and we'll use all of the feedback we get throughout the year to help the customer panel choose which topics to focus in on. So it is important that you all keep talking to us. And that will really help drive this forward and provide more evidence of what we're doing to support customers and help us to make decisions. So again, TPAS and Kevin are involved with scrutiny panels up and down the country and have been for a number of years. So can you give us a little bit of background, other than what I've just said, Kevin, about how these normally work and what some of the benefits would be to somebody getting involved in something like that? Sure.
So scrutiny is a bit of jargon. Not everybody likes the word. I prefer to call it a closer examination of something. So the regulator says that tenants and residents should be given the opportunity by their landlord to be able to have a closer look at something that concerns them or is an issue for them. So I've been working on scrutiny now for 12 years all around the country. It's one of my areas of expertise, and I think it's one of the most influential ways in which tenants and residents can get involved and make changes and make differences. So typically when in this kind of approach, a group of tenants will get together, they'll decide on something that they want to look at closely, an area of their landlord's service or performance that they want to examine. They'll work with the landlord. Typically, they'll be given access to the information they need, the people they need. They'll have a look at it and see if they can see what's going wrong, what's going right, what needs to be improved. And as you quite rightly said, it's about them using their experience, their lived experience of a service, to sort of explore it and see what they can do to possibly make recommendations to improve. Normally, those recommendations would then be made straight to the board of the landlord, and that's very important as well. This isn't something that gets filtered through layers of managers or whatever. Normally, in the models that work extremely well, they will report straight to board and give a tenant perspective on what they think about what they've looked at. And they'll, as I said before, they'll look at the good and the things that also might need to be improved. It's for the board to decide then what it does with those recommendations. It doesn't have to act upon them, but in the vast majority of scrutiny exercises I've carried out, if they're well evidenced, they're well thought through, if the proof is there, boards usually agree with them. In the vast majority of cases where I've worked, most of the recommendations tenants make are adopted. And then the important and key thing is that the board tracks to make sure those changes are implemented. So if tenants find something and say, and I give many examples, but somewhere where they think something could change or be done differently or improved, if the board agree with that, then it really is for the board to make sure that that is seen through and it's changed and it's implemented. And also, importantly, that the tenants involved and tenants across the city are aware that those changes have been made. So it's a very powerful tool through which tenants can drive changes in their organisation. And they're best placed to know what it's like to receive a service and what that experience feels like. So, as I say, it's been running as a model for about 12 years. I've worked with numerous scrutiny panels up and down the country. In every single case, they've made real differences to the service and the way it's run. And ultimately, it benefits all tenants. And the tenants that work on that have that kind of mindset. They want to do it for everybody. They want to make things better and try and improve things. Also, it builds great relationships between staff and tenants as well, because working together, it tends, if there is an us and them, it tends to go away, and it's about solving problems together and figuring things out. And is there a way we could do this better? So I've noticed, again, over the years, that it generally leads to better working relationships between tenants and staff as well, because they get to understand each other's challenges and the barriers and the things they're dealing with. So it's a great way to work closely together to fix things, basically. And I think that's the mindset. If you enjoy fixing things and trying to put things right, this is the one for you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so we have got a couple of minutes. Appreciate everyone's time is precious, but a few minutes for some questions that we've had come in. So hopefully my colleagues in the background will be able to pass those to us so we can hear from some of you tonight.
Okay. We have had a couple of comments around repairs and how we respond to complaints. So how will the customer panels work with Wolverhampton Homes to improve the core services for customers?
I think it is a really important point to raise, and in my previous roles, repairs has always been the number one thing, and you'd expect that. It's the main bulk of the service that we offer, other than day-to-day management of tenancies and estates. So we do realise that, and a lot of you will have only ever really needed to contact us when a repair needs doing, so we do realise that if we can improve that, then it would make a big difference for all of our customers. It is a big theme of our complaints because, again, it's the biggest, exposure all of you will have to Wolverhampton Homes is when you're booking that repair. So that, again, might be the only time that we're coming into your property other than maybe for the gas check. So we do know that needs improving. What we've done to date, we did move quite quickly off the back of some of these new rules and changes that the government announced to introduce a customer resolution team. So when complaints are coming into Wolverhampton Homes, they're assigned a dedicated customer resolution officer, and the focus is on resolution, so solving the issue where we can. And where we can't, just trying to be as transparent, open and honest as possible about that situation and the reasons why we can and can't do things. I think where we see it going to the next level, from my point of view, and hopefully Kevin would back this up in some of the experiences he's had with running these scrutiny panels, can we get customers more involved in reviewing some of those complaints? So using repairs as an example, if there's a particular trend with complaints about repairs, is there something that we could be doing differently or better? And ultimately, you know, I'm looking after the complaints. I'm not on the receiving end of booking that repair, but you are as a customer. So having that take from you is more important than anything that we, could say sat here about that. And I know that is normally one of the biggest starting points, isn't it? Is scrutiny of the repair service, or an element of the repair service, because it's such a big thing, or their involvement in complaints processes as well.
Yeah, I mean, many of the scrutiny panels I've worked with have looked at, as you say, areas of repair. Repairs is a big subject, so one of the top tips really when doing scrutiny is don't make your subject too big and too wide. Focus in on particular areas. I've worked on so many responsive repair exercises, and in every case we've discovered stuff that could be done differently, could be improved, done in a different way. Tenants have spotted ways to save money. They've actually looked at things and said, well, why do you do it that way and why don't you do it that way? That would save time, money, resources. It is a favourite subject, and I've never worked on an exercise with tenants where we haven't found 4, 5, 6 things that could be improved or done differently. And often it's that customer insight. It's people's experience of receiving a service which gets them thinking and say, I don't understand why they do it that way instead of that way. I've just finished doing one in Sheffield, and I think we came up with 6 recommendations out of that. And all it was really just very simple stuff, like when somebody calls to do a piece of work, you get sent a survey. But it gets sent a survey 5 minutes after they've left through the door. And people say, well, I don't know whether the repair's been done or not within 5 minutes. I haven't even turned the tap on yet. Why don't you delay that a little bit? Why not give it 48 hours, even if in some cases, maybe even 2 weeks? And that recommendation has been accepted. It's like, yeah, you're right. If we do it straight after the person's left the job, you probably don't know whether the repairs worked or not. So yeah, repairs are really, really important area, I think, to look at. And just on that question about what would a customer panel be looking at, or what influence would it have on repairs? Well, you would normally be getting a lot of data and seeing a lot of information about performance. So those panels tend to look at the picture, see how areas are performing. And, only this week I was working with a group of tenants where we were looking at statistics on some of the key things that the landlord's supposed to do. And performance has really dipped. I mean, it's really quite worrying. It was like 60 and 70% performance where it would normally be 80 or 90. So a panel like that can ask the difficult questions, can say, why is this happening? What are you going to do about it? What measures are you putting in place? And provide that challenge to the landlords to do better. Yeah.
Hopefully that gives you a bit of insight. And again, if you're not able to send the question in, you can get in touch with us afterwards, and I'm happy to speak with anyone that has got any ideas or thoughts on tonight's session. I think there's a few more questions that we've got coming in as well.
Yeah, so next question is from Gemma, and she said, if I am already on the housing strategy scrutiny panel, will I still be able to help within Wolverhampton Homes?
Yes, okay. I don't think under the terms of reference, I may stand corrected. We definitely want that to happen. I think there's benefits to having people that are involved in both sides. And the point that Gemma's raised there, I think Kevin touched on it earlier as well, is that the City Council have recruited a group of residents, loads of different tenure types, backgrounds, ages, ethnicities, everything, to get involved in a panel that will look at the experiences. And also, when we've got those 6 commitments that Wolverhampton Homes have embraced as well as part of the City Council's plans, making sure that the City Council deliver on those. Yeah. So it won't be for the City Council or Wolverhampton Homes to say, oh, brilliant, aren't we doing a good job? It will be for you as customers across the city to say, yeah, okay, we agree, you're doing a good job, and this is why, and this is how we know, importantly, that that's what's happening, by looking at the data and the results and things like that. So, yeah, absolutely, we'd welcome anybody. I know the City Council are always keen to hear from people as well at the moment, who want to be more involved, and ultimately there's lots of different ways that you can. You might have some people from some of the other managing agents on tonight's call as well. I know that they've got really strong tenant leadership in those parts of the city as well. So what I'd suggest is that anyone that is thinking, oh, maybe I could help, no matter how small, please do get in touch with us, and we'll go through how you can do that in a moment, and then we can give you a call and get in touch or come and meet with you to discuss what that might look like and what's best for you, really.
Yeah, lovely. I think that leads us quite nicely into the next question, which is from Jane. And she's asking, if I was to join the customer panel, what would that involve time-wise?
Okay, so for the customer panel, which was the first element that we talked about, that probably is one that does require a good chunk of time commitment, because we're looking for people to come and get involved, not as a one-off, but on an ongoing basis, probably for up to 2 or 3 years. We'd want, because we want to make sure that we can invest in those people, we can support you, we can give you training and skills, and ultimately for you to get something out of being a part of that panel as well, and that does take a bit of time. We want to make sure that anything that comes out of our scrutiny panels that we run, or those closer examinations, that the people that are on that customer panel have got the time to see that through, because some things can happen more quickly than other things. So in terms of the length of time, then you'd be looking at that. In terms of kind of weekly, monthly commitments, we're probably looking to arrange for the panel to meet every couple of months, and we're thinking that could be between 2 and 3 hours really, for those meetings to take place. And if you're super committed and you want to get even more involved, and you want to come down and actually shadow some of the services, follow them round, come and have a look at some of the different services and how they work in real life, then that could be added on afterwards. But important to say, we do want to support you to get involved, so any expenses and things that are incurred, we can support that, and the different equipment and things to be able to access, say some of the spreadsheets we might have information on, for instance. We'll make sure that you've got the tools to be able to do the job and help us in the right way as well. All of the information on that will be on our website as well, which I'll come on to in a second. And again, it's just useful, Kevin, from your experience of attending all these different scrutiny panels and customer groups. What's been your take on like the level of commitment that's required, and how we shouldn't let that put somebody off as well, I guess,
No, not at all. I mean, I think one of the important points is for the group to decide how they want to work, where they want to work, and when they want to work. And I think you've got to give the people those options. We have the advantages of some new technology nowadays. People are getting used to joining meetings on Zoom and Teams. It's not for everybody, but it does mean more people, perhaps if they're working at home or looking after the kids or whatever it might be, that they have opportunities to join in and things. And many of the groups, particularly in scrutiny, you can drop in and drop out of those sometimes as well, because everybody's got things going on in their lives. So I think it's for those groups really to decide how they want to work and what works best for them. And I think it's for Wolverhampton Homes to support that and try and resource that for people. But I think you're absolutely right, Bex. I think you have to be really clear with people about what the time commitment is, so people go in really, really knowing exactly what it's going to involve and how much it's roughly going to take. So giving people a menu, I think, is really important, and helping them to decide what works for them and what doesn't work for them. But as I say, I think the important thing is once groups form, that they have more control over, where, when, and how they work. And across the country, we're meeting in really exciting ways now, and all sorts of times of the day as well. I've been around in housing for a long time. In the old days, it was 9 till 5, and then we all went home. Nowadays, I work at 6:30 in the evening, and what we tend to find is more people can do that and get involved at that time of day. So flexibility, I think, is the key. Yeah.
Definitely. As Kevin says, I think it's best that we get guided by anyone that just put themselves forwards as well. I think we've come to the end of the questions. If we have missed anything, we will come back to you after tonight's session. So please do keep commenting and sending your questions in for us. If you do want to have a chat about how you can get involved in anything that we've talked about tonight, please do let us know. If you've got particular issues that you need us to look into, I imagine some of you have commented some of those, then we will pick those up after tonight's session as well. And really to summarise, I think, we're really overwhelmed by the support that we've had so far from customers, and to see so many of you tonight joining us and listening to Kevin and I for the last however long talk about these plans, that's really encouraging for us, and we hope that continues. Want to thank Kevin as well for his time. He has said he doesn't mind working at 6:30 at night, and here we are, so that's probably a good thing just as well. And if you are interested and you would like to have some more information, you can go onto our website to register your interest. There is a short form where we collect some of your details, so we are able to get in touch with you after tonight. So you can do that by logging on to www.wolverhamptonhomes.co.uk. wolverhamptonhomes.org.uk/community, and that should come up in a Google search as well if you're unable to find it. And if not, get in touch with us through the normal ways that you would, and I'll make sure that I pick that up and that a member of the team gets in touch with you within the next couple of days to discuss what we can do next. And I think that probably is it for tonight. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you all again soon.